Well, hello, folks. This is Nathan Winters, president of the Wyoming Family Alliance, and things have been going at a very rapid pace in the Wyoming Legislature. We are coming up, as of the time of this video, we're coming up to the 29th day in the Wyoming Legislature. So that's 29 out of 36 days. And that means that within the next 2 weeks, a lot of busyness is going to happen. That means already, as of last week, bills that started in one chamber will have gone to the other chamber. And starting this coming week, if bills don't meet certain deadlines, they will start dying for not meeting those deadlines. And so there's a lot of very intense work among members of the House and members of the Senate and Wyoming Family Alliance as we are there working on your behalf to uphold those major issues of life, religious freedom, family values, and providing opportunities for parents to have parental rights in education. It's been very active. At this point also, there are a number of concurrence committees that are ongoing. Now, if you haven't heard of that term, here's what a concurrence committee is. When the House, say, passes a piece of legislation, it will go to the Senate. If the Senate adds any sort of amendment or they look at something differently, maybe it's a very extreme difference between the two. These concurrence committees will include the prime sponsor of the bill, usually, and a couple of individuals who have worked on it in each chamber. So 3 and 3 from the House, 3 from the Senate, and they'll meet in a meeting room. Other people can watch, but they don't participate. They don't give testimony in a concurrence committee. And so the House and the Senate will work through the differences between their two respective chambers and come out to a conclusion. They'll then report back to the House and to the Senate, and then the Senate as a whole, the House as a whole, has an opportunity to agree or disagree with the position that that small concurrence committee came up with. This is a little nuance that oftentimes people don't know happens whenever you are looking at the legislative process, but it makes a lot of sense if there are differences of opinion. With concurrence committee right now, we actually have several bills already in the pipeline and ready for concurrence. One of those is regulation of surgical abortion. This is a very powerful bill brought by Representative Martha Lawley. She's done yeoman's work on things like the regulation of surgical abortions, a very thoughtful, common sense bill that continues to help in situations until the Supreme Court makes a decision on the Life as a Human Rights Act, which was passed 2 years ago. These bills are so important to try to protect life. The other one I want to bring to your attention of Martha Lawley is House Bill 72. House Bill 72 is entitled Protecting Women's Privacy in Public Spaces. Now, this is a very important piece of legislation that we at Wyoming Family Alliance, and actually with the assistance of Alliance Defending Freedom and others, we've really worked on this bill. It's very important. This bill is of such grave importance because even as we're looking at people who work for the state of Wyoming, who are told that they're going to have to go to the bathroom with someone of the opposite sex. I can't tell all the stories, but there are stories that have happened here in the state of Wyoming where people who have gone through great trauma because of something like this, they have been basically forced to suffer through this, and it's created issues in their own personal lives. This ought not happen in the state of Wyoming. Martha Lawley's bill is one of the most carefully crafted bills, something that first of all, she's a very astute lawyer, but then with the assistance of Wyoming Family Alliance, Family Policy Alliance, Alliance Defending Freedom, and others, she's tried to make sure that this is a carefully crafted law. Now, there's another bill that came out of the Senate. It's very, very brief. It really doesn't touch a lot of the major issues that are happening. And so now we have basically these two bills that are competing against one another. If you will, would you reach out to your senator? Would you reach out to your state representative and let them know that House Bill 72, Protecting Women's Privacy in Public Spaces, is a very important bill, and you want to see that passed because this bill will truly protect women and the privacy they deserve. Another very important piece of legislation, also sponsored by Martha Lawley, is House Bill 43, Age Verification for Websites with Harmful Material. This is Very, very carefully crafted. Again, she pulled from some of the very best minds across the country. Now, all of these bills are carefully crafted to fit within the Wyoming statutes, but this one she pulled in folk from Family Policy Alliance, our national ally, the national ally of Wyoming Family Alliance, and from Alliance Defending Freedom and others. This bill is now on general file. It's already made it through committee. It's on general file in the Senate. And what we need is for the Senate to actually allow that bill to be heard, and heard as quickly as possible. A lot of work has gone into that particular bill. Another bill is student eligibility in sports. And this one was carefully crafted to ensure that boys don't play against girls in girls' sports. And so you already know the story of folk like Leah Thomas, a swimmer at the University of Pennsylvania, that basically stole a lot of the opportunities that young ladies had worked their lives for. He was ranked kind of way down the list as a male swimmer. So what he did is he declared himself to be a different sex and went and swam on the women's team and began to get gold medals and trophies. Well, that was a major issue. I think many people understand the nature of this issue. This bill is the one that's carefully crafted. So again, I would ask you to reach out to your senator, to your representative, and tell them that you support House Bill 60, student eligibility in sports, the amendments. And so thank you very much for the work you're willing to do to make sure in the next 2 weeks, these important pieces of legislation pass. Moving on to some other very important legislation. Yesterday, the 21st of February, I had the privilege of speaking again on a bill that has been very near and dear to my heart for going on 10 years now, called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It had already made it through the House, very overwhelmingly. It made it to the Wyoming Senate, and it was heard in the Senate Judiciary Committee. We had representatives from the First Amendment Partnership there, and also from Alliance Defending Freedom. Art Washut, representative out of Casper, worked so hard on this bill, and is very evident with how the bill passed. The bill passed 5-0. And so it's so good to see how after 10 years of work, that good legislation continues to be carried forward. And so just continue to pay attention to the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. If you ever have any questions on these things, please email us at wyomingfamily.org. We have a place on our website if you want to know more about these important issues. 3 more bills I want to bring to your attention. First is the Wyoming Freedom Scholarship Act. This bill has gone all the way through both chambers, and yet is sitting in a joint conference committee. This again is that current concurrence committee that's so important to hammer out the differences between the House and the Senate. Now, some of those differences on this bill are rather large. And so it's going to take a lot of patience, a lot of wisdom, a lot of prayer to look at how an answer can be brought to ensure that parents have the opportunity to choose the best path of education for their children. I saw a statistic just in the last 2 weeks that 97% of students in the state of Wyoming are in a public education system. Wyoming really has not done a great job of giving people opportunity to find the education choice that best suits their family. This bill will go a long way toward fixing that. So do pray for wisdom for everyone involved, both in the Senate and in the House, especially those who are working through that joint conference committee. 2 more bills. The next one I wanted to bring up is compelled speech is not free speech. This is one brought by Senator Hutchings. And Senator Hutchings does a great job pointing out that if a school district or an employee of the state of Wyoming is told that they have to call someone else a gender that they clearly are not, that is forcing them into the path of what is known as compelled speech. It actually is something that is a limitation on the right to a free conscience, and it forces a person into being complicit with a lie. This bill now has gone through both chambers. It also has been appointed to a joint conference committee as well. There's just a few minor changes. We'll see how that turns out. I look forward to reporting back to you, and what I hope to report back is that it passed with flying colors. Lastly, we have terminating and defunding diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is brought by Senator Sherry Steinmetz. She's done great work, tremendous work, focusing in on the diversity, equity, and inclusion how it's baked into different aspects of the University of Wyoming. Now, last year, she's the one that brought the legislation that defunded the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. But what we've been able to see, and I gave testimony on this, is, for instance, the testimony I gave was of a young nursing student. And she was told that she needed to write a paper for a nursing class on social justice, where what they recommended is you write a letter to the governor or someone else in a position of prominence, and that you pick some sort of social justice issue. And it gave a number of different examples of what that would look like. One of which, of course, was to pick out a transgender child, even if it was a hypothetical scenario, and then explain to the governor or someone else why the state of Wyoming needed to change its policy to fit the social justice record. Well, that's an example of DEI right in the nursing program found at the University of Wyoming. Those kind of things ought not be. It would be so much better to have nurses trained on how to actually become a good nurse and save lives, rather than watch them be indoctrinated politically. And so this legislation is of such great importance. It is passed through the Senate. It is now it's passed through the House Labor Committee and will be heard on general file, hopefully sometime within the next week or so. Things are happening very fast here. And what we need from you is we need for you to pray. We need for you to pray for wisdom. And the Bible tells us in the book of James that if anyone lacks wisdom, we can ask of God, and he will give it to us abundantly, bountifully. And that's really right now what we need people to do, to get on their knees before God and say, Lord, would you please give the state of Wyoming and our elected representatives and senators, would you give them wisdom? Secondly, reach out to them. One of the best ways to do that is to send an email to them and encourage them. You know, they get a lot of emails that really hammer at them from different directions. If you were to send a little note and say, hey, I prayed for you this morning. I'm so thankful for your willingness to step into that difficult place and stand up for your constituents and for the people of Wyoming. I promise you, it will have a tremendous effect. I've been there before. And I look at how God builds people toward one another for the good of his kingdom, for the glory of those around us. And it gives us the opportunity to really make a difference in our time. So please do reach out to your legislator and let them know that you're praying for them. For more information, please go to wyomingfamily.org. If you want to know more about the different pieces of legislation we're looking at, we also have the website wyofambilltracker.com, wyofambilltracker.com, and you can just keep a running update of what's happening in the Wyoming legislature. It is such a blessing to know that you are watching and that you care. And just know that it's a joy for us here at Wyoming Family Alliance to stand here in a place where we get to serve the Lord alongside you all. Thanks again.